That way they wouldn't flee. They wouldn't have the opportunity to taint a witness, to cover their tracks, to flee, as I just said. We've seen this in so many cases, right? Where it's like, as they're building their case and as they're trying to make it ironclad, they have people who they may suspect as being involved. And so even if they can't charge them with a direct connection to the crime, if they can charge them on something else, they will, just as a way to keep them off the street and get them locked up, sometimes even to scare them so that maybe they'll fold because they think that the police know more than what they have shared. And really, this was the only theory that even seemed to make sense at the time. And what made that speculation inevitable was the pattern in all of this. Pregnant woman vanished late at night after getting into an unidentified car at the house of family members who she didn't really know all that well. Her phone was found abandoned, even though those same family members said that she never went anywhere without it. Then, weeks later, her body was discovered in this remote forest, and she was no longer pregnant. And nobody was saying anything. Then, instead of homicide arrests, the first people taken into custody were arrested on charges of drugs, lying, and evidence tampering. How does this make sense? I mean, if Rebecca's disappearance had been a random act of violence, surely the investigators typically would have said that. If there was no threat to the public or the community, that reassurance likely comes pretty quickly. I mean, it usually does. But here, there were no statements like that. Just very careful wording, very limited releases, and an emphasis on patience. So that led many people to start asking some underlying questions. Who exactly was Rebecca with the night that she disappeared? Did she even get into that car? Why was her phone separated from her almost immediately? And if the people closest to her were allegedly lying or interfering, what were they trying to hide? It also became hard to ignore how law enforcement was moving through this case. Investigators appeared to be isolating issues one at a time, almost like they were just trying to clear out obstacles before laying out the bigger picture. Which, I will say, that is a strategy that we often see in cases where multiple people are involved and where stories don't line up. But still, even with all of that, most people's focus was still laser focused right in on Rebecca's fiancé and her sister, on whether their arrests would somehow escalate into murder charges down the line. But what very few people realized at the time was that the investigators had already shifted their attention somewhere else entirely, not on the fiancé, not on the sister, but toward two other people who had been close to Rebecca in the days before she disappeared. And that's when this case took a turn that nobody was prepared for. 5 days after Rebecca was found, between November 30th and December 1st, police arrested Courtney Bartholomew, Rebecca's biological mother, and her husband, Bradley Bartholomew. Now, at this time, there was no question about what investigators were alleging. These were not secondary charges or charges to get them off the street while the authorities continued investigating. These arrests, they went directly to the heart of Rebecca's death. On December 2nd, the Michigan Attorney General's office formally announced charges against both Courtney and Brad. And according to the charging documents and the statements made in court, the prosecutors believed that Rebecca was the victim of a planned and deliberate attack. Both her mom, Courtney, and Brad were charged with an extensive list of very serious felonies, including first-degree premeditated murder, felony murder, torture, conspiracy to commit torture, assault on a pregnant individual causing miscarriage or stillbirth, conspiracy to commit that assault, unlawful imprisonment, and removal of a dead body without a medical examiner's permission. Now, 6 of these 8 charges carry the possibility of life in prison in Michigan.